What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. This is going to be episode number 29 at the WYNN. Heading in right now, May 23rd, 8 p.m. Let's get in there, play some cards. 2-5 no limit.
While waiting for the 2-5 game, we pick up $235 in the 1-3, so we're off to a nice start. We get called for the 2-5 game, and in our first big blind, we have 10-Jack offsuit. Hijack raises to 15, button calls, small blind calls, so I defend for $10 more. We go 4 ways to a flop, Jack 6 deuce with 2 spades, small blind checks, I check to the original raiser who bets 25, button calls, small blind folds. We aren't going anywhere with top pair just yet. I make the call and we improve immediately with a jack of clubs on the turn giving us trips. I check, original raiser slows down after getting 2 callers on the flop and checks, and it checks through. River is a bad card, king of spades completing the flush draw. I check since we may not be good anymore and we want to keep some bluffs in. Original raiser bets 75, button folds and it's on us. No sense in raising since we only get called by better, so I make the call and we hear the good news when he says ace high. Next we have 5-8 suited in the big blind. Under the gun raises to 20. Action folds around to the small blind who makes the call. I defend as well, and we go 3 ways to a flop, 7-4 deuce with 1 spade. We have a gut shot to the nuts and backdoor flush draw. Small blind checks, I check, and the original raiser bets 40. Small blind folds and it's on us. The original raiser has about 1,700 to start the hand. I have 1,500. I think this is a great spot to start bluffing since this board is much better for me than him. There's also a great chance he just has overs that we can fold out like ace-king, ace-queen, king-queen. Even if he has pocket nines or better, we can put a ton of pressure on one pair holdings on the turn and river, so I make it 110 to play. He goes into the tank for about 30 seconds and decides to let this one go. Next we have ace-jack suited in middle position. The $10 under the gun straddle is on. I raise to 30. Same player on my left from last hand makes the call. We go heads up to a beautiful flop, king 10-4 with 2 clubs. We've got the gutter to the nuts and nut flush draw. I think that you can play this a few different ways, probably mostly betting here, but sometimes checking, maybe check raising. I decide to bet 30, start building a pot. My opponent likes this flop as well, and he wants to play for more money. He raises it to $110. We're both pretty deep, over 1,500. Of course, if we were much shorter, we'd just get the money in here, but we want to get to a turn card, so I just make the call, and we get a blank 6 of spades on the turn. I check to the aggressor, planning on calling most bets here, but he thinks for a while and sizes up huge, making it 400 on the turn. The bet doesn't really make sense. I mean, I think he's losing a ton of value in the long run. If he has like a set of 4s or a set of 10s, he's going to fold out all my aces, ace-king, king-queen type of hands. And I could potentially have pocket kings or pocket 10s myself. I'd play it the exact same way. So sometimes you see players want to protect their hand, but honestly, I haven't seen an overbet like this on the turn and since I've been vlogging. So interesting bet. Good bet against my exact 2 cards. I'm not really getting the right price, and he seems too tight to pay me off on the river even if I do hit a club. So I go ahead and lay this one down and we'll look for a better spot. Next we have 7-10 suited in the cutoff. Under the gun straddle is on. Action folds around to me and I raise to 30. Only the straddler makes the call. We go heads up to a flop, queen, jack, deuce with 1 club. Not much going here, but some backdoor draws. He checks to me. I start bluffing with a bet of 30. He makes the call. Looking for some help on the turn, and we get it with an ace of hearts. It's a great card to continue firing since I'll have more aces in this spot than the straddler. I also block king 10, so when he checks to me, I size up with a bet of 95 to put the pressure on. He thinks for about 20 seconds and makes the lay down. Next we have king-queen offsuit from middle position. I raise to 15. We get calls from the hijack, button, and small blind. We go 4 ways to a flop, 10-9 deuce with 2 spades. Pretty good flop with 2 overs and a gut shot to the nuts, and we have the king of spades. Small blind checks. I'll mix in betting and checking this flop. With 3 other opponents in, I like to check this one and see what develops. Hijack bets 25, button calls, and the small blind folds. I make the call and we nail a queen of hearts right on the turn, giving us top pair. I check. Hijack likes the queen as well and bets 75. Button calls the 75. My hand is pretty under-repped here, so I make the call. River is a blank, 4 of diamonds. I debate making a blocker type of bet on the river here to sort of set my own price, but decide against it. If he was betting for value on the turn, he's repping straights and 2 pair. Aggressor thinks for a while and checks, and the button checks. I show the king-queen and it's good. Nice. This is a fun one. We have king 10 suited on the button. Under the gun $10 straddle is on. Middle position player raises to 30. Next player calls. I call, small blind calls, action is to the straddler who 3-bets to 150. He's got about 950 behind. I'm thinking the original raiser is going to jam or fold since he's got about 650, but he decides to just flat the 150. That brings in the next player on my right. Now there's 500 in the middle and action's on us. I'm not going anywhere now. I call the 120, thinking the small blind will join in, and he can't resist either. He calls, so here we go to a rare 5-way flop with 750 in the middle already. Flop comes Jack 9-8 with 1 club. Small blind checks, actions on the straddler who thinks for a little bit and decides on a bet of 200. Next player immediately goes all in for 512. With an open-ended to the nuts, backdoor flush draw, and nearly 1500 in the middle, we are getting the correct price on this one to go ahead and rejam. I put it all in. Small blind folds, and the original bettor, the straddler, folds after betting the 200, said he had kings. The all-in player says he has aces, which is great news. Let's run it out. Huge pot here. We're looking for any 7, any queen, any club will help. Up against aces right here. We go to a turn card, which brings a 10. Not the worst card. We can win with a 10, king, queen, chop with a 7. Here comes the river. 7 for the chop against aces. So we chop up a big pot. We profit about $325 on the hand, so can't complain about that result. Pre-flop, the hand might be a little questionable, but in position there with that much money in, we're not going anywhere. Let's pause for a quick message from my son Gavin.
If you want more poker videos from my dad, please like and subscribe. Thank you.
That's my boy. Thank you, everyone. All right, back to the action. Next, we have King 10 again on the button. Under the gun straddle is on. Player on my right limps. He's an opponent I want to be involved with. He's been limp calling with a wide range all night. I raise to 40. Folds around to the limper, who makes the call. We go heads up to a king high flop, king jack deuce with 2 diamonds. He checks it over to us. I bet 30 for value. He makes the call. Turn brings a blank, 3 of spades. He checks again. I bet 75 this time, and he makes the call. I'm thinking we're up against a flush draw or some sort of jack. River is a 9 of clubs. Diamonds miss, and he checks it to us for a 3rd time. Queen 10 gets there, but I don't think we should be concerned with only one hand here against this particular opponent. I think he's going to pay off with any jack or any king. I think a bet here needs to be kind of player dependent. Against tighter players, we probably just check this one back since we're not going to get called by worse. But this guy, like I said, is going to call with top pair, middle pair. So I bet 120 for value. We get snap called and get the bad news when he shows king 9 for a river 2 pair. So although we didn't get the best result, I still like the river bet against this opponent. Any card but a deuce 3 or 9, and we make the extra $120 on the river. So just an unfortunate 9. Sadly, we go cold for about 2 hours, watch thousands of dollars be given away at my table. I couldn't really get involved. We lose the 2 whales and our game broke. Get moved to a new game, and shortly after we sit, we pick up pocket kings from under the gun +1. I raise to 15. Next player calls. The next player after him 3-bets to 60. He looks to have about 1500 behind. Action folds back around to us. With one opponent in the middle, we definitely want to get some more money in to isolate and get heads up, so I put in the 4-bet to 180. Player in the middle folds, and after some deliberation, my opponent just calls the 180. Of course, he could be getting tricky with aces in position, but I feel like he has probably a set mining hand like pocket 9s through queens. So we go heads up to a very safe looking flop, 10-3 deuce rainbow. I down bet to 130 just as I would with ace king. My opponent eventually decides on a call. Turn brings a 3 of hearts pairing the board. I think there's merit to both checking or betting here. Checking looks like I may be giving up with ace king and may induce a bet from him with an overpair. My opponent appears to be a thinking player, so I assume he knows that I might check this safe turn with aces or kings as well, so I decide to bet for value, really targeting like queens and jacks. I make it 300 to set up a jam on the river. He's in the tank for a full minute, ends up laying it down. Later I told him nice fold if it was jacks or queens, and he said he had a 10. So sounds like maybe jack 10, 9-10 suited, looking to hit a big flop in position.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
About 5 minutes later, we have ace jack of diamonds in the small blind. Under the gun player limps, cutoff raises to 15, button calls. Action's on us. I don't want to take a flop 6 ways with ace jack, so I put in the squeeze to 75, looking to isolate, or fine with taking down the dead money now. To my surprise, the big blind cold calls, which usually looks like a medium-sized pocket pair that players are uncomfortable cold 4-betting with. That also brings in the cutoff and the button. So we go 4 ways to a flop with ace-jack suited out of position, ace-10 deuce with 2 diamonds. Beautiful flop. We have top pair, nut flush draw. Little concerned with a set of 10s out there, but we're certainly betting. I lead for 140, and one by one they all fold. We will happily take that result. Next hand, the button straddle is on, and we have pocket 4s in the hijack. Action folds over to me, and I raise to 30. We only get called by the big blind, so we go heads up to a flop 3, 5, 6 rainbow. He checks to me. With a pair and open-ended straight, I bet 35. My opponent makes the call, and we nail the straight right on the turn when the 7 of diamonds hits. It also puts 2 diamonds on board. My opponent likes that card as well, takes the lead, tossing out a $100 bet. Since we block 2 of the 4s, it's super unlikely he has a straight with 1, and is he really going to lead into us for 100 with 8, 9? I think that's doubtful as well, so I think he most likely has 2 pair, possibly a set, and I think he's going for value against an overpair. Or he could be bluffing on a board that looks much better for his range, so I flat here for deception, and we get a queen of hearts on the river. He continues betting and makes it 225 on the river, leaving himself about 400 behind. Again, this is a spot where earlier in my career I'd just call here since there are hands that beat us. I would never think about going for value, but I'm really putting him on 2 pair that might pay us off here. A shove will look somewhat suspicious since I just called on the turn and backdoor diamonds miss. It's going to be hard for him to put me on a 4 or 8, 9, so after some deliberation, that's what I do. I go with my read and put it all in. He doesn't snap call, which is good news, so we know we made the correct play. And he actually goes in the tank for a long time, nearly 2 minutes, before finally letting it go. But later he would say he thought I was bluffing so bad he just couldn't put me on a hand, but he just couldn't make the call with 2 pair. So I'm really happy with my play there, putting an opponent in a tough spot, knowing that he could call with worse in that position. Next we have 7-10 suited on the button. Same opponent from last hand limps under the gun. He limped earlier with pocket kings, so I'm keeping that in mind. Middle position player makes it 20. Next player calls. I call. Under the gun limper makes the call. We go 4 ways to a flop ace king 7 with the ace king of hearts. First player checks. Pre-flop aggressor bets 40. Action's on us. With bottom pair and a flush draw here, I decide to just call because what else can I really rep? I mean, I could possibly rep a set of 7s, but I'll never have pocket aces or pocket kings in this position, so I decide to just flat in position, and action gets back to the under the gun player who puts in the check raise to $110. Check raising 2 opponents here is pretty strong, and remember I said he previously limped in a straddle pot with pocket kings. It got checked down. So I think he can have ace king here. I'm not going to give him credit for pocket aces or kings, simply because when he limps under the gun and has a raise and 2 callers, he's definitely putting in a 3-bet. So I think he might have like ace king at best. Worst case scenario for us, he has like queen jack of hearts, but we're still ahead of that hand. So the next player calls the 70 more, and I call as well in position. We go 3 ways to a jack of spades on the turn, giving us some additional equity with a gut shot now. First player continues with his story, making a sizable bet of 375, only leaving himself about 130 behind. Next player folds, and it's on us. Now this is just a super close spot mathematically, as opposed to earlier when I folded to the $400 overbet on the turn. So it's 375 to call, and the pot is 795. We need like 32% equity for it to be correct. If he has 2 pair or a set, all of the hearts and queens should be live. After some calculations, I decide it's close enough to make the call here. He also has 130 behind that we might as well include in the pot because he's never folding. So I call, and naturally we brick when the 4 of spade hits the river. So we fold after he goes all in. Now we're back to even. Next we have Jack 9 suited on our button straddle. Action folds around, and only the small blind and big blind make the call. I think about raising here, but decide to check back my option, and we go 3 ways to an amazing flop 10, 8, 7 with 2 clubs. Both players check it to me. I bet 20. Small blind calls, big blind folds. Turn is an offsuit king. Small blind quickly leads out for 50, has about 600 behind. We're definitely not slow playing in this spot with a few clubs on the board. Hopefully he has 2 pair. So I put in the raise to 150. He only takes about 3 seconds before saying all in, which is great news. We think we might have the same hand. I make the call, and river is a blank deuce of spades. I just roll it over since we can't be beat, and he folds. So we take down a big pot there with the nuts, no thinking necessary. He would later tell me that he had pocket kings and he was getting tricky pre-flop, thinking I was going to raise. So we'll never know, but that's what he said. Next, we are on the button with pocket queens. Under the gun, player limps. He's the same opponent from last hand. Hijack limps, and I raise to 25. Both players make the call, so we go 3 ways to a flop. 7-6 deuce rainbow. Great flop for queens. Both players check to me, and I bet 40 with the overpair. And we get calls from both opponents, so we go 3 ways to a 9 of clubs on the turn. They both check to me again. Really not a great card, as straights and 2-pair combos get there. Plus, I was somewhat concerned on the flop after getting called by both on such a dry board, so I just checked back for pot control, although I probably should be betting at a higher frequency there. Right as a 10 comes out on the river, under the gun player says, "Excuse me, stop right there. Did I act on the turn?" So he says he never checked. The dealer thought he checked. Floor must be called over. So floor comes over. They each explain their side of the story. Dealer isn't quite sure after everything if he checked or not. She said, you know, she thought he checked, so she moved the action along. That's why we both checked. He said he never checked. Nobody really knows. So the floor is going to go ahead and give him the opportunity to act on his hand on the turn, which he indeed decides to check after all of that commotion. But what's going to happen now, the 10 is going to go back in the deck, which is a terrible card for our hand. It's going to go back in the deck and have a chance to come back out. So she shuffles it back up, and what do you know, the river, we get upgraded. The queen of diamonds hits, giving us top set. Now he checks, next player checks, nobody seems interested. I bet 100, both players fold. And that's going to wrap up this session, guys. Hope you enjoyed all the hands. Good night tonight. In the 1-3 game for 500, out for 735. In the 2-5 game for 1700, out for 2490. So we book a $1,025 win. A little over 6 hours. Gonna take that home. Stay to the end for a cool trick shot. We'll have a chat here at the end of the video.
All right, guys, that's it. Appreciate you taking the time to check out episode number 29. Hope you enjoyed the hands. That was a fun session. A lot of interesting situations, some close calls mathematically, a couple gambling sort of situations. Glad we were able to book a nice win. Games were good today. Sadly, that one broke. That was a really good game, the first game we were in. But as always, here are the stats after every session. Share those with you guys after every single vlog since we started. So things are going good. I know the win rate's crazy. Keep in mind some of those wins are a couple 20-minute 1-2, 1-3 sessions, but I'm trying to just keep track of everything as we go. So yeah, things are going good. The next session will be at the Mandalay Bay, which I played last night. That's going to be a really fun one to go over and share with you guys. They're going to run a featured 2-5 no limit every Friday and Saturday. $400 buy-in to $1,500 buy-in. So check that out, guys, on Friday and Saturday if you'd like to play 2-5. And then maybe we'll have a meetup game there someday. So that's going to wrap it up. Stay tuned for the next one, episode number 30 next Sunday. Hit the like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and stay to the end for a cool trick shot, and we'll catch you next week. Best of luck in the tables.